Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode 2022.10. As usual, we've got Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Rohan, how's it going?
Good. And this episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa. Easily access your local Home Assistant settings remotely for a small monthly fee that supports the Home Assistant and ESPHome projects. Configuration is done through the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, SSL certs, or any other YAML.
All right, Rohan, 2022.10.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So another month, obviously. But before we get to 2022.10, a couple of announcements that I think have come out first. First one being State of the Open Home has been scheduled for the 13th of November at 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah.
For those not familiar, State of the Open Home, previously called State of the Union, is, I guess, Home Assistant's yearly conference where the founders of Home Assistant get together, sort of make some announcements, what we've accomplished this year, what we're looking forward to. Previously, it was in person. I don't know if it's going to be live again in person now that pandemic's sort of semi-over or we're starting to open back up, or generally there was always live streams of it. But anyway, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when you can tune in.
Yeah, and in the past they even did like community members that would go in and do demos and stuff like that, right? So I think that was kind of cool too. So
and we've done a live episode there and had people commenting on as well. So always fun. We'll see how that's going to work this year.
Yeah. And then if people are interested in the Xiaomi FP1 sensor, we actually did a live unboxing and we talked about it in the in episode 3 of the All Things Smart Home show. So go check that one out. We'll leave a link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, it was quite fun. I got some ideas from people during the stream as well, and I actually my original idea of using that sensor and needing another sensor because they were a bit slow has actually been solved because during that stream we found that they actually emit events of people entering a room, which I was able to tap into first, and now just running that sensor as soon as I walk into my office here, bam, lights are on. It's fantastic.
That's cool.
Yeah. And a big one this month now, October is month of What the Heck. It's also Hacktoberfest. So if you haven't already, log on to DigitalOcean, register for Hacktoberfest, get yourself a free t-shirt or plant a tree. You get to choose. I think you've just got to make 4 eligible pull requests in either GitHub or GitLab. Home Assistant is going to be signed up for that program. They have generally, done it every year, and we've seen a lot of influx of stuff coming in. So I do expect, the November release to be big. There's going to be some voting available also on the Home Assistant community forums, where you can vote for, quirks, things that you want changed in Home Assistant. That's the whole idea of what the heck, why is this happening? Why can't we get that changed? Obviously, just because it's the most upvoted item or sort of competition, but anything that just because it's highest voted doesn't mean it's going to be added into Home Assistant. It is still a community project. But yeah, I think Rohan, have you got anything that you would say right now? What the heck? Why? What do I want changed in Home Assistant? What frustrates you right now?
Well, I mean, we've got one that I really want to add in there too, right? And which is in RTSP, or sorry, in an MQTT camera, you can't add an RTSP stream. So
interesting.
I'm gonna be creating a community post around that, and and hopefully it gets enough upvotes. So
nice. My what the heck would be in the profile area or the settings area of Home Assistant. When you log into Home Assistant, you get generated a short-lived token that lives in your profile. And I think if you don't choose the remember me button, then every time you log in, a new token is generated. If you go into your profile, you'll actually see at the bottom of the screen near your long-lived tokens, just above that, there'll be a whole list of short-lived access tokens. And there's no way to delete those over time. So if you log in,
yep.
So I just go into my profile and there's 50 odd tokens that are sitting there. So I have to delete them one by one. It would be nice to be able to just clear out all the old ones or anything like that. I think that would be handy.
That would be handy.
But yeah, 2022.10. What do we got, Rohan?
Oh man, there's a few things. There's actually some really cool parts here. So, for example, we've got brand connections, right? So, essentially, we don't know what it's going to be called, but think about it as you've got. Let me give you an example of something with a bunch of entities. So, if Google, for example, there might be Google Nest, there might be a bunch of other like Google Calendar, Google Sheets, whatever other integrations. So today, those are all listed out as if you go into the integrations, if you go and try and add an integration, it'll be Google Sheets, Google Nest, Google whatever, Docs, whatever. Uh, so what they're going to do is they're going to start collapsing it so it's easier to find. So it's more of like, hey, what are you looking for? Hey, I'm looking for Google. Okay, great. So let me search Google, and then in there, there's going to be a couple of other categories within there. So kind of like a sub menu piece, right? So that is that's going to be coming into this release as well.
And I think they're also, from my understanding of it, too, you can do like a search and Philips Hue might come up, and then it will tell you how you can link that item into Home Assistant. So, you know, because Philips Hue is a Zigbee protocol, you can, you know, link it through ZHA, Zigbee to MQTT, or the Philips Hue hub.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to play with the beta, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to this release. But yeah, I'm hoping that's how it's going to work. That's how I understand it anyway.
One thing I forgot to ask, actually, we had the creators call as usual, but one thing that I wanted to ask, or I thought of after rather, is I wonder if custom components can leverage that too. So quite a few people obviously use custom components.
Yeah, that's right.
So if that's the case, then if I have a custom, I don't know, I used the example of Google earlier. If I have another custom Google component, maybe like Google Meet or something like that, will whoever developing those custom components, will they have access to that? So but yeah, so
there's like that's a great one. 2 year local 2 year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different options for sometimes for a single platform, right?
Yep.
Or multiple parts within that platform, right? So for example, Tuya might have something that's Wi-Fi based, and Tuya might have another product that's Bluetooth based, right? So those could be two separate options. So what do you want to pick? Or again, Ecobee is another one where we talked about a couple of episodes ago, where it's like, hey, you can run it through the integration or you can run it through HomeKit. But I think in a case like that, it won't show up because it's still HomeKit.
Interesting, yeah.
But yeah, so I think, you know, there might be a couple of gotchas there.
All right. Another thing coming out, I think we mentioned this in the last episode as well. Active connections for Bluetooth proxies are now available. So yeah, now if you're using an ESPHome device and you want to use it as a Bluetooth proxy, it now also supports active connections. Rohan, they said something on the creators call about what's coming soon for that too. Are we able to talk about that?
Yeah, so I think it's actually part of this release. I think that's where the active connection parts come in. So I think what's happening is, so as you move through, so today, if I'm using an ESPHome, I've got like a Xiaomi sensor as an example, something like that.
Yep.
Well, what happens is that sensor is connected to that ESPHome. As it moves through my house, it might still be connected to that ESPHome. Maybe I have one in my office here, and then I'm going to the other side of the house or in the backyard or something like that, where I might have another ESPHome, but it doesn't actually move over. So it's the way I understand it, it's more of like Home Assistant is now controlling that connection rather than the ESPHome itself. So what happens is a Home Assistant can actually broker it to say, hey, you know what, we're going to move to this radio. So it's almost like having roaming in the wireless world, where you have multiple access points and you roam between them. At least that's how I understood Paul is talking about it.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. It's sort of, yeah, you're right. Like a Bluetooth device being linked to one sort of, you know, like a phone. If it moves away from that phone, then it's broken the connection. But this could allow, I'm just trying to think of, you know, some random Bluetooth devices that you may want to move around the house. But also keep their
presence as an example, right? Like,
presence would be great. But even like if you could have, like, let's say you've got like a smart sensor, right, that you then move to another room for whatever reason. It doesn't necessarily then have to pair with another ESPHome. You can then, if that's how it works, that is a game changer for Bluetooth, because it
Yeah.
essentially also it almost replicates like a mesh network that a Zigbee or a Z-Wave would do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's more among roaming rather than like a mesh where like in the wireless world, a controller would have the brain and it would have that control, and the radio is effectively that's all it is. It's just a radio.
Gotcha. Okay.
Rather than the access point itself owning it. So sounds kind of similar. Again, I may have this wrong, but that's kind of what it sounded like. And if that's the case, that is very exciting.
Either way, Bluetooth, just this past 2 months has really like been opened up to smart home again. I think it was sort of a gimmicky thing. I know when Philips Hue announced that they were adding Bluetooth to their Philips Hue hub, to their Philips Hue bulbs, I thought, well, what's the point, right? Like it's going to be inferior. But now with Home Assistant now having the ability to link up to Bluetooth devices, yeah, it's a game changer.
I'm still, I don't know. I'm still not sold on Bluetooth as a.
Oh, 100%. Like I would avoid Bluetooth at all costs. If there was a device out there that said I'm only Bluetooth, and I've got a few like Soma controls, the SwitchBot I think is also Bluetooth. They were a pain in the ass to get into Home Assistant.
Yeah.
Having to run bridges and all that, and you still have to do that with ESP devices now. It just sounds like Home Assistant now has the ability to direct control them, as opposed to needing a third party bridge, Raspberry Pi in the middle. But
it's
I would
Bluetooth that doesn't entirely suck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd still avoid Bluetooth. Like if there was an option between a Bluetooth only device or a Wi-Fi Zigbee Z-Wave device, I'd probably go and avoid the Bluetooth one. Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. One thing I am really excited for is Subviews that are coming out. So this is, and I was actually in the middle of playing with a new Lovelace dashboard for a tablet that I want to eventually put up in my house.
Yeah.
And this is come in very nicely, nice timed. So in Home Assistant, you have now the ability to create what are called subviews. These are views that they don't appear in the side menu. And when they are displayed, they will show a back button in the navigation bar instead of the menu. So previously, this was done with, I think, Browser Mod. You could have done that.
Because you have to hide the...
You have to hide the default navigation bar and then replace it with a back button. Yeah. Now with Subviews, Home Assistant will display the back button in that panel and remove all the other menu items. So it actually feels like navigating through another page in a mobile app. And it's particularly great for things like tablets, phones, where you are going to use that back button. I was using the Mushroom custom chips. They have a back button on there, but it puts it in line below that menu, and it doesn't make sense. But with Subviews, this is going to make it completely different.
Yeah. So... And it sounds like there's going to be like essentially like a navigation card there too, right? So it's like in your tablet view, you can tap on that card and that'll take you into that subview. Because again, remember that subview is hidden is from that top menu as well, right? So when you like again, if you're using UI mode to create it, when you hit edit, you'll actually see the subview, and there's an option there saying like make this a subview essentially, right? And once you make that a subview, great. And then when you hit done, it effectively gets hidden. But then now the question is, how do you get back into there? Well, that's where it's something like a navigation card comes in, where you tap that card and it brings you into the settings for that. So if you think about it, that means you can now have like a much cleaner tablet interface, right? And then you tap into like, hey, I want to modify lights. Great. You tap into lights and then you've got your light settings and say, hey, I want this one up, down, whatever that is, right? So that way, when people walk into your house, for example, it still looks clean. It still looks nice. It's not just here's a bunch of stuff, right? That's a bunch of different controls.
It's interesting that you bring up the navigation bar. So as I was creating this tablet UI, I had, I would create a view for a room, but I don't want that, up the top in the bar all the time. So the only way to hide it in that navigation bar was to hide it based on which user was logged in.
Hmm.
So then, I have to edit the view and then go, okay, only show this view for these people, and I'd have to select the non-tablet, like everyone except the non-tablet person, essentially.
Yeah.
With Subviews, I don't have to do any of that. Like that's so handy.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. There was one, we don't really have it in our show notes, but I thought it was kind of interesting. Which is really, they're restyling some of the dialogues as well. So like a lot of the pop-ups that pop up and things like that. And it's one of those things
Oh
where
yeah.
you kind of need to look kind of carefully to recognize it. But effectively, again, to just align with more like Material 3 kind of design principles.
Yep.
More rounded corners, things like that. So that's coming as well. But all
Little
right,
lick of
that's
paint
here.
across the whole thing.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, cool. YAML automations can now be viewed in Home Assistant. So previously, if you were trying to view a YAML-based automation, it would instantly display an error telling you this automation can't be edited. Really frustrating, I must say, kind of when I can't remember which automation I've built in YAML and which one I've done in the UI.
Hmm.
You can view traces, of course, for both YAML and UI built automations as long as they've got a unique ID. But yeah, you would just hit the, okay, yes, show me this automation, and no, you get an error. Sorry, it's a YAML automation. Get out of here. Now, Home Assistant will try and show you a interface of the automation you've built in YAML, same way as if you had done it in the UI. So yeah, very handy. Obviously, it's only read only, but of course you can then copy and paste your YAML back into the visual editor in the UI if you want to then move things out of YAML into the UI.
Yeah, I think eventually the goal is also like to be able to just like click a button and clone it and like do those kind of things, right? So that'll be
Yeah,
kind of nice.
perfect. Yeah, that'd be
But
good.
yeah, so but even if not, at least you have a visual reference of, okay, I got this. Great, let me dump it and create a new automation based on that for now, right? But yeah. All right, let's talk about some new integrations. We've got Google Sheets. It's actually an interesting one because now it essentially what it does is it lets you append rows into a Sheets document. So what that means is now I can take some data from Home Assistant and put it into the Google Sheet. So for example, maybe I have Google Data Studio that's looking at a bunch of stuff that I'm using to
Mm,
graph out, I don't know, whatever, long-term trends in my home or something like that. But now, in theory, what you should be able to do is take some of this information that you see in Home Assistant and actually dump it into a Google Sheet. I think right now there is a bit of a limitation where you can only have one active sheet that's being worked on. Uh, but I think it's still kind of nice to another way to export data or whatever, right?
this would be very handy for things like energy.
Hmm.
Some of the energy dashboard, like,
Yeah.
because then you could just push it to, the Google Sheet would be a long-term storage. That's if you don't want to do
Yeah.
something like Influx or any other long-term storage options out there.
Yeah.
The only caveat to that is I think there's still a lot of energy sensors that aren't exposed as entities in Home Assistant, which I would love to see. I was building out, my tablet dashboard, and I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have, like just a custom mushroom card of, how much energy consumed today or how much the cost of energy has been today. But that
Yeah.
is in the energy dashboard, but it's not a sensor that I can just template out into my dashboard that I'm aware of. So
Hmm.
hopefully that'll come. Maybe there'll be another what the heck item, and that'll
That's right.
come
There you go.
this month. All right. iBeacons are now supported in Home Assistant. So they are Bluetooth enabled devices that advertise identifiers to announce their location. So one example that the docs mention, and I think we've mentioned a couple of times on the episode, is also on the podcast, is attaching an iBeacon to a trash can or a rubbish bin, and then
Mm.
to determine if that bin is on the street or if it's in the garage. Um, so there's some known devices that are currently working with the iBeacon integration. They're from Blue Charm and Feezycom. I'd love to see more support. I'm actually using a Room Assistant I think it's
Yeah.
room assistance that I'm using, which I have paired with a couple of my Tile Pro trackers.
Mhm.
So yeah, if I could replace that with these iBeacon supports, because they're just advertising a static
Yeah,
Bluetooth MAC address, I think that would be really handy.
that's cool. All right. Kegtron, everybody's favorite topic, beer. So so Bluetooth smart keg monitor support. So again, with the advent of Bluetooth coming in, so on. Um, so the integration supports smart keg monitor devices, which is their first generation, so the KT100 and the KT200, which relay data via BLE. So hopefully, Brandon, who we had on episode 54, hopefully Brandon's excited. So
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah, it is.
KMIT microbot push, so allows you to locally control a microbot push, which is a small Bluetooth button pusher, similar to a switch bot. So yeah, now it's a Bluetooth device that you can control with Home Assistant.
Yeah.
I've got like a few switch bots. I don't know if I have I only had one random use case for it, and I've sort of stopped needing it. I don't know if I've. Have you got anything around the house that you would just want a random little robot to push a button for, Rohan?
I've seen people do it with like a coffee machine and stuff.
Yeah.
So to turn it on, so I forget which episode it was, but we had Pete, I believe, XBMC
Mm,
Nut, come in, and but he talked about, let's open up the coffee machine and actually just wire it into I think it was a Shelly One
yep. Yeah, I think so.
relay, right? And or a relay of some kind, in either case. Um, if you don't want to do that, I think that's a good use case for it. I do think they're kind of like bulky,
Mm,
but I get it. You got to have space for the electronics in there, right? So to actually push that button. So, but I don't know if I have because anything that I kind of like, again, like my light switches and stuff are all smart anyways, right? So I don't know. Yeah, it's a hard one. I don't think I have a use case for it. The curtain version, I might have a use case for, right? The buttons, I don't know.
mm.
But
If you've got we have a garage door opener
mhm.
near our front door, maybe you could, you know, push that to remotely. But then you could probably easier to just go out and get one of those, HomeKit compatible Bluetooth garage door openers and
Yeah.
wire it into your
Incidentally,
garage door.
funny you mentioned garage door openers.
Mm.
My queue, I think, broke again over the weekend or over on like,
Uh,
I don't know, like Thursday or Friday or
I
something.
think I
So
saw something on the Facebook group.
yeah, which is
Uh,
fantastic.
yeah,
You know,
because my garage door is like compatible with my queue, and I was like, oh, I'll just buy the module, and then yeah, I've just seen all the hate on
just
Home
it's
Assistant forums for it.
it was actually really good for a while. I don't know if they just had like a cloud outage or what it was, but it was
Mm,
really good for a while. It was stable for me at least. And
yeah,
then because you haven't heard me complain about it in the
that's true.
podcast either,
That's true.
but yeah, I don't know. It's I'd
So
love
you
to get
have
off of it.
like you've got the MyQ.
I do. Yeah. So
Any reason why you haven't switched it out for something like HomeKit compatible? Like, there's some really cheap Miros Wi-Fi HomeKit compatible garage door openers that you can buy off Amazon,
yeah.
like $50. Because it's HomeKit compatible, it should be locally controlled, not need the cloud, and you
Yeah.
just wire it in. Any reason why you haven't done that now, or you maybe thinking of it now?
No reason I haven't done it. I've actually I got to one point where I started looking at again different options, stuff like that, and then I think I just got distracted or had way too much work going on, or something like that, and just ADD
Yeah.
kicked in, and it didn't take over from there. But no. Am I willing to replace it? Yeah, I just don't know if I want to spend the money today, but I
Yeah.
might, just from a reliability perspective. It's just annoying. Um,
Because the last thing you want to do is like get home, your smart door lock isn't working for whatever reason. You haven't got keys with you to open the door.
yeah,
And your only way into your house is to go through the garage, and my key's down.
yeah.
Although you don't have an internal door, so I guess
Yeah, I mean, I have a garage door opener button in the car, right? But
No. Don't bring logic into, oh, I'll just bring the key
yeah,
fob
it's
with
true.
me,
It's
Like,
true.
no.
It's
It's
true.
smart or you're done, right?
That's right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. But yes, you would just have that in the car, right?
Yeah. All right, Switchbee. So apparently that's a company that makes smart homes more accessible and affordable. Um,
Excellent.
yeah, sounds like a bit of a plug there. I don't.
Yeah. That
That's
sounds like, a bit of a
I
salesman's
know, right?
put that together.
But we have I have no idea who Switchbee is. So again, I'm not saying
No.
anything there. But I mean, I'm sure they are though. That's good for them. But so now they've brought in some device types: switch, timed power switch for some like a boiler, group switch, timed switch, lights and dimmers, and scenario, whatever that is.
I assume that would be like a scene, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
All right. Some breaking changes. So this is just a little subset of breaking changes. There are
Hmm.
more on the release notes, but a big one for anyone that's using the Bayesian sensor. The
Yeah.
probability given false configuration variable is now a required configuration variable. And I like the explanation. There was no mathematical rationale for the previous default value. So there you go. Yeah, so you'll need to put that in. There's also a numeric state template, and state entries with only one two-state configured will now also only update to the prior probability accordingly if the observation is false. Yeah, so it shouldn't affect everyone of the Bayesian sensor, but yeah, you will need to go in and make sure everything has a probability given false at least. I know I got
Hmm.
picked up when I tried to run the beta there.
Interesting. Workday. So if you use a Workday sensor, there's some changes in the upstream library. So there's some stuff that's not supported anymore. So UK subdivisions, so Wales, Scotland, England, etc., can't be provided as values to the country configuration keys, but they can be used to the province setting. Um, Isle of Man is no longer a recognized province of the UK, so you use IM for the country code instead. And the extended Portuguese holiday set is no longer available as a separate country, but you should use PT as the country code and EXT as the province. So
Interesting. The Workday sensor is like a really cool sensor to have in your home. This is an instance if you need it. Like, just the way it does public holidays for your local region. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Some other bits for the podcast today. Our feedback just went off the chain this month, right? So Petrus emailed in saying thanks. So, hi Phil and Rohan. I listened to your entire library of podcasts while moving into my house in Germany last year in May. Since then, I moved over completely to Home Assistant and away from the 5 to 10 different apps for all my smart home devices. You really inspired me, and now I'm addicted to Home Assistant. So, sorry to your bank balance.
Yeah. Right.
With the current energy crisis, I was able to massively reduce my gas consumption using smart solar power diversion using a system, My Energy. All controllable and viewable in Home Assistant. I have only been running the full energy monitoring for a month, but it looks like as if I will drop my total gas consumption by 4x, so 4 times their normal gas consumption, which is huge.
That is
So
massive. Yeah.
well, needs to pay for all these gadgets he's going to buy putting into Home Assistant now. But yeah, that is
Right.
cool, and it's also reducing greenhouse gas emissions, especially with reducing gas consumption. So yeah, always cool to see how Home Assistant can help out with that, and that's a great use case for the focus on energy for this year in Home Assistant.
Yeah, and speaking of, so last episode, Phil, you kind of ranted a little bit about the energy items, energy costs not being
Yes.
available for easier access, right?
Mm.
So Frank actually had some feedback around that as well. So where it's not as easy as most people think, just because again there's I think it also depends on how much stuff you're monitoring, so on and so forth, right? But during the day, if you use solar and you don't get enough solar, how many? It's not exactly like dollars times the kilowatts used or kilowatt hours used per device, so on, right? So
Yeah, because my complaint was, that Home Assistant can tell me that we have used, $4 worth of electricity today, and it can tell
mhm.
me that my dishwasher used this amount of kilowatt hours and my lights used this amount of kilowatt hours, but they don't show me the cost breakdown. Um, which I get it. If you're using solar, do you say, all right, your solar energy attributed to the dishwasher on at this time, or was it this switch? Yeah, I get that. Fair point, Frank.
And James also emailed us. Maybe there'd be an option to switch the graph between like usage, like a stack bar there versus and a source stack bar.
Mm,
So there's no conflict in when you're trying to display the data. So it kind of help um, improve just the way the layout is right now, right between electric and gas and so on. So, but yeah, so instead of having two graphs, maybe have a stacked sidebar or a stacked graph
yeah.
or a side by side one.
And the water shut off. So we had our episode with Ryan, and we mentioned who I can't remember who it was. Was it me or was it you, Ryan, saying that we can't have the quarter turn valve on because
Yeah, it
of
was me.
it was you, yeah. So David emailed in to say just turn the water off where it is at the moment, and then after the city side, install a new quarter turn ball valve. So you'll essentially have two water off valves, one after each other, and then you can use a quarter turn valve
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah. I guess the problem with that, I guess at that point, because I'll need to get a plumber in anyways
Yeah,
to do that work. But at that point, I might as well just get them to replace the main one with a quarter turn, right? Um,
yeah. I mean, David was saying don't bother getting a plumber, right? Just do it yourself.
just do it yourself. Yeah, I don't know if I trust myself with that
Well,
though.
that's it, right? Especially, yeah, you turn the water back on and you break a pipe, and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also
It's
my
funny
issue
with
is
electrical. I'm always like, yeah, sure. I think I should be able to do this. With plumbing, I'm like, gas. I don't
whoa,
even look
yeah,
at. It's that's
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I
That's
will blow
probably a good
myself
thing.
up. So
Yes, yeah,
get a
don't touch the
professional.
gas. The other problem I have with a few of these like quarter turn ball valves is that they need power. It might be like a 12-volt transformer down or
Hmm.
something to it, but it's still getting electricity out to where it's only water. Especially for me, our water from the city comes in the garden, right, where there is no
Yeah,
power. So um, yeah, then you put water and power next to each other. It's not really
it's a
a
good
good
mix.
recipe to
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Ours is interesting. The shut off is at the bottom of my driveway.
Yep. Yep.
And then so technically, I don't know how it is for you guys, but technically like even though it's our property, the government technically has control of the last 6 feet
Yeah.
of our thing. So
Yeah. We call them
it's
easements here. Like,
yeah, so it's like something like that, right? So where
yeah.
it's essentially, I think it's actually just past there. So I think it is technically still on my property. I'm not sure exactly how the legality works, but essentially
Mm,
it's a buried pipe.
yep.
So they've got a tool where they can like pop the cap off, and then they like a really long tap closer, I guess, and or opener or whatever. It's
Yeah.
essentially so they go in and they'll turn it and run it here. But inside in my basement is where the water main comes in just before the meter,
Yep.
and then yeah, so
That's interesting. Yeah. So we have like, yeah, just in the middle of the garden bed. It looks like we can see the water meter itself,
mhm.
just ticking away. And
Oh,
there's
interesting.
like next to it, there's a tap, right? It just looks like a faucet, a tap, whatever you like to
Yeah,
call it. That you turn off and on. And literally, you could be walking around your neighborhood and you'll just see at the front of everyone's house, there's a little tap, right? It doesn't have a water outlet or anything on it. That's actually everyone's water main. So people you
hmm.
walk past, you could be walking down the street and turn off everyone's house in the street if you wanted to.
Interesting.
Um, but yeah, when what from the garden bed into the house, I have no idea where it goes after that. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
So,
I,
but then if let's say you don't pay your bill, your water bills, whatever, city comes, they shut it off, so you can just go back
no,
outside
that
and just
well,
turn it.
that's the thing, right? So apparently, depending on who I've heard and this is, we're getting into conspiracy theories or something here, but I think in Australia they don't turn your water off. Like there is some
okay.
law where are not allowed to turn
Right.
the water off for you,
Which makes sense. It's a human necessity, right? So
obviously, you're just going to rack up debt and debt and debt, so you'd obviously need to pay a bill. But I think in the event that they're not going to be bothered to come around, and sometimes they don't even bother checking your meter, right? They'll just estimate your water usage based on previous trends and stuff like that.
Yeah. They actually, I think for us, they do every other one or something like that. Where they'll we're supposed to call it in, but they'll actually.
So it's self-reporting, right? Yeah.
It's self-reporting, but they actually do send a person down. I don't know how often, whatever, maybe every other report or once every 6 months or something like that. So I actually don't ever do mine, and I just let them estimate it, and then just at least once or twice a year it'll correct itself. So I'm not.
Yeah, of course.
I just got lazy. I used to work for that group, so I learned that, and I was like, all right, it's the last time I'm doing this.
I guess that's one way to automate it. That you just automate your own water bill, right? Yeah.
So, but it's the advantage of working for the city as my first job there.
Yeah.
But cool. I think that's our episode.
I think that's it. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode as well. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us. All right.
Cheers.
Take care. Cheers.
If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant Podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.